Good morning, all. On the latest episode of the Turn It Round the Corner podcast, we've got part two with Mickey White. So, 34 countries and counting. Mickey, how are you today?
I'm good, thank you, Christian. How are you?
Yeah, all good. Thanks, mate.
Okay.
So, I've listened back to the first part. Amazing to listen to someone with that much experience who's travelled, that far and wide for the game that we all love. So, I think yesterday we got up to your time in Nigeria, which I think was about 10 years ago. So do you wanna close that out? So you were working there for a little bit back and forth, and then is that something that you didn't want to do for any longer, or was that just a short term thing, or how did that
Yeah,
end up
well,
in Nigeria?
we, we'd gone. I'd gone out there uh, just to go out, just to see how it was for 10 or 12 days. So I've done it a couple of times. In all truth, I'm still in contact with the guy from the academy there, and it's still thriving. The only problem they have now is uh, getting players after the Brexit. It's getting the players to get visas and things. It's become more difficult for them, which from a British point of view or an English point of view, it's ideal because
Yeah,
it slows it down. But from their point of view, it becomes more difficult. So there is there's opportunities there to still go back, but at the moment, it's just something I'm not really going to commit to. Nothing financial, nothing. It's just from a safety issue.
yeah.
Some of the things I was kind of hearing and seeing over there was a little bit scary. Because intertwined in a couple of Nigeria trips, we did Cameroon as well,
Wow.
which was even further up the scale of worry. To be honest,
Yeah.
we didn't know we didn't know from day to day what was going to happen, and it was quite a high anxiety feeling for me. Uh, you know that we had to be rushed out of certain places, certain buildings, and the words were, "We'll just get you to safety." So
Mm.
that doesn't sit well with me. So and we didn't know what it was. Nobody ever explained. So we kind of skipped on that a bit. I did the one trip in Cameroon, and that was it. And then I did another one to Nigeria. Um, and there's still a lot of interest. It's just I'm not really undertaking it since just because 99% of the time I've been in contract with a club, and majority of the clubs don't like you going out and doing extra work or something that's not involving their club. So I've
Sure.
kind of set it aside.
So when you finished your sort of relationship or coaching experience in Africa, Mick, what was your next step?
um, I generally used to just sit back in Manchester where I was living and just have a little look through. And I made contact with a couple of people, and one got back to me from it's called British Football Schools.
Yeah,
At the time, they were based in Moscow, and so then it was a case that I got offered a 4 month contract to go out there
yeah.
with a view to an extra year. Um, and then upon arriving there, it's everything that you imagine Moscow to be was spot on. It was very a dark feeling because the weather wasn't nice, and it was cold. And
Having worked in Moscow myself, Mick, what time of the year was you there? I think that always makes
um,
a massive difference.
September to December,
Right, so it's starting to get cold then.
starting to get a bit. I think it was like -22 when we left the
Yeah,
day. So, but it actually turned out to be a really nice experience because firstly, I got to work with a young lad from Leicester, Pritam, and it was an absolute joy to work with because he wasn't he wasn't a football fan, but he was teaching background.
right.
So to work alongside him, it then taught me a little bit more about patience with players, and you know, not necessarily directly on football side, on a personal note, how people would treat and talk to other people where I could be a little bit abrupt because results matter, etc. And we've
Sure.
got to get this done. But he wasn't. He was very personable, and I learned a lot from Pritam on that way, and Richard, who run British football schools. Um, the people are so nice. It's just that your concept when you go there, you think they're not happy or they're not. But they don't. I don't know if you know this, but if they don't know you in Britain, if we don't know people but we just smile at people, they don't do that. So that can be perceived as they're not very friendly, but they're not. They're actually really quite friendly people, and I did enjoy the 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 little things that we could do besides the football. We was
Right.
working in international schools all across Moscow. We lived in Malodozhnaya, which was like a little market trading townish kind of thing. So it was always quite bustling and quite busy. So it was really good to be around. Just after we did the 3 months, we just decided that we weren't going to go back, and I think they could see that we weren't totally happy how it was structured, but we did work with some good players, some excellent players out there, and we got to work with I don't know, German international Kevin Karani.
Right.
He was living out, he was playing out there for Spartak Moscow.
Okay.
So I got to work with his son Christian, and that was always a good thing because his dad would then sit and say, "Listen, this is what I think he should be doing." So the guy who's playing the World Cup, you're going to listen to.
Yeah.
So we got to pick bits of him and other players that were playing out, foreign players that were playing out there. Um,
When you talk about safety, Mick, how did you find Russia? Because traveling for work, there was a few places where I always felt like I needed to be on my toes. Um, and Moscow to me was always one of them. How did you feel?
yeah, yeah, we weren't in a position where we was in anywhere that was um, in a danger, I don't think, or known danger. But we were taken into places like there was a place called Rosinka where all the politicians and the wealthy folk lived. Well, that was
Right.
all community with security, quite heavy security. So we kind of enjoyed that side of it. It was okay because you felt safe once you were in there. But outside was just, yeah, there was times when you just weren't feeling too comfortable.
Yeah.
Uh, but then we just sort of made a point of we didn't go out alone ever. I never went out alone. And then we sort of made a point of let's find somewhere that's more busy. Don't get isolated in dark streets and things. So it was a bit like that. But generally, on the whole, wasn't too bad. It was just the transport side was a little bit scary
Mm.
because cars used to stop and people would get in the cars. We thought there were taxis and there weren't taxis. They were just random people that you just give money to and they'd take you where
Yeah.
you need to go. But then you didn't know if they were insured. And we had one guy that was drinking vodka while he was driving. And we were like, well, okay, thanks here. Stop here. And we thought it was a taxi.
Yeah.
So there were these little moments that, but then we got to see like the Red Square. We went to the Kremlin Open tennis. So we saw some really good positive things, Gorky Park. That was a good experience just to go and see these things that, again, we'd only seen on TV.
Yeah. Interesting. So on your return from Russia, Mick, so it was new travels and where was next? Is that when you come back to work for Accrington or?
Yeah, that was it then. So my boss from Bolton had taken the head of recruitment at Accrington, and they were looking for to fill a few spaces in their part-time schedule. Um, so I was we got the under 12s there, so that was pretty good. Some nice little players. The only thing with Accrington was either side is Burnley and Blackburn. So the minute
Yeah,
you got a
sure.
player that was half decent, it was kind of whipped from under your feet. So you,
Yeah.
you felt that there was a little bit. But a good little club. The only issue I had there was um, you'd check your bank for the salary, and you'd have to go in and ask for the money. And
Yeah.
it got me a little bit frustrated to think that that they weren't ready on the salaries weren't ready. I don't know if that was for everybody, but definitely for the part time staff. That became a little bit frustrating. So
Was that before the new chairman? Because I really like the new chairman. He always comes across as a great guy. I know he had a bit of an outburst last season and said he was putting it up for sale and he was being blocked by the local council for doing this, that, anything else. But was that before the takeover or
do you know, Christian, I never really got involved with any of the people,
right?
above where we had to go in and see. There was a couple of good coaches there. I think one of
Right.
them's now gone into America, but he was a really good coach. But just the way it was kind of for me is from the football side. We did our side. You turn up on time,
Yeah.
do your training, you structure it, you're trying to do the best thing you can for them, and then all of a sudden you're like, well, when do we get paid? And
Yeah.
it's not what I wanted from. It's not what I expected from an English club with the tradition it had had. It's got a good tradition, and one of the founding members and all that kind of thing. So for me, it should have been nailed down, but I just sort of left it till just after Christmas of 2014, and I just went looking elsewhere and just decided just to draw a line under it and move on. So,
Right.
which I did. I moved on and I'd just moved over towards Leeds area, so I went to Leeds United. There was nothing there, and I ended up at Rotherham,
Okay.
which was a fantastic experience because I was expecting similar to Accrington in size and structure,
What
but
league were
actually
they in at the time, Mick?
they were in the Championship at the time.
Right.
But they were all like so there would be like, well, Paul Warne, who's now at Derby County,
I really like
he
him.
was assistant
Yeah.
at Rotherham. His son was in an our under 12s group,
Right.
but Paul would take an interest not only in his son but just how you're getting on with things.
Yeah.
Gareth Barker, who was the academy manager, he was the same. Very, very informal but very involved. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
the coaches there were they look like mates more than anything. Whereas in other places I've been to, it's sort of like, well, you do your job, I'll do mine, and we go home. Whereas here they all interacted quite well and they all looked after each other a little bit and covered each other, and and it was really comfortable to be around. Um, and I managed to do the modules, the FA modules.
Right.
I did them. I did my last one at Rotherham through Leeds United, and it again there were coaches there just on the spare time trying to help you through. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sort of giving you bits of advice, and I found that really helpful. But it made you feel comfortable, and it was a nice feeling. But once again, there was no full time stuff, which is something I'd been striving to try and get, and there's so many good coaches out there. You kind of struggle to nail down a full time position.
What was you doing, Mick, when you was in these part-time roles? Was you just doing odd jobs to fill the time so you could dedicate as much to your coaching as
Yeah,
possible? Yeah.
yeah. I went to work at. I was cutting chips for a fish restaurant in Leeds. Um, I'll drop the name in Wetherby Whaler. It's a big kind of franchise around Yorkshire,
Right.
and they have like fish and chip restaurants. So you make a full meal out of it.
I think I've been
And I used to,
is in Blackpool, I think.
yeah,
Is that the franchise? Yeah, just like a Harry is it like a Harry Ramsden's place, yeah?
absolutely, yeah,
Right,
exactly the
okay.
same, yeah. So I just did just any work that would do. But when I went in, I just said, look, I've got this thing with the football, and that's what I'm really looking to gain
Yeah,
interest in and keep on that. And the lady I worked for was absolutely fine. She would say, look, just come in and tell us when your game is. And so we had games. So if you had a game on a Sunday, then she won't put me on a shift on a Sunday. And she was
sure.
and they fitted round us quite well. So I was quite happy with that. And then I spoke with Rotherham and spoke to the academy manager and asked if there was other work that came up, would I be okay? And he said, look, as long as it's outside of what we're doing, no issues. So alongside that, I'd had a bit of contact with a guy who's at Wolves now, Ian Birchnell. Birchie.
No.
Birchie's his first team coach at Wolves now, but it was Forest Green manager, and
Right.
other clubs. But he was out in Norway at the time. So in the summer, I used to go out to Oslo it was like June, July, and August. I'd do like a week out there, and
Right.
on one of the trips to we had a place called Opsal, which is like a third division team, and Lørenskog. So in Lørenskog, we was I kind of set into this week's work, and there was a job going, full time job, and they explained it all. There was myself and a guy called Andy Toman, ex player, and there was one job, and the both of us were looking for a full time job.
Right.
So on the last trip we did, we was sort of sat there, and we got the feeling between we spoke since we still speak now, me and Andy, and we got speaking about how we'd like to do this and how we'd like to do this, and you know, and I was kind of a bit nervous because Andy's played at Wembley, scored at Wembley. He got an award for uh, sort of developing the women's game. He
Okay.
got an award at Wembley for off the FA. He was an educator for the FA for 20 years, and I'm like, wow, I can't compete with this guy. So I kind of just sort of, oh well, I'll probably not. I'll lose out to the job. And then I think it was the last day we was just waiting, and my phone rang, and it was a guy from EBUAF again. Would you like to come back? Would you like to come back, and we'll give you? He said, look, I said, look, and it was this simple. Write down 3 lines in an email. How long? What am I going to do? And what's the costings? What's the salaries? He did that within about 5 minutes. So I went into Andy and said, look, me and you now will go down for this job, push you onto this job, which Andy got. So I spent 3 years in Iceland, and he spent 3 years in Norway, and
Right.
everything fell into place quite nice. So it was quite good. And me and Andy still look out for each other now for work, and but it was good because the work in the Scandinavian countries of Norway and obviously Iceland and Sweden and these places was really it's an eye opener because again what we spoke about yesterday with the Nordic countries, how people just get on with
Yeah.
life when everybody else is sort of looking for cover when the weather turns a little bit, and they're just like, wow, let's just do it.
The
So it
Viking
was
mentality, mate, as they call it.
a brilliant mentality, and Norway again is one of them countries. If there was an opportunity there, I would. I've had 3 or 4 interviews to go to Norway,
Yeah.
but they tend to go now with the part-time local staff because it saves them a lot. Obviously, with Brexit, it dropped it. It dropped our chances as well. That we
Sure.
can't. We have to go for a visa now, so
Yeah.
that's always a bit of an issue. So, but yeah, Norway, and then it was again back to Iceland. I did have to explain it that in the intervening time I'd got married and that my wife would come with me, and the sporting director said, "Well, look, we'll get her a job if that's
Yeah.
what you want. We'll get her a job, no problem." And they were really accommodating. So we headed out there. That was 3 years there, and I had the reserve team then as
So
well,
what
which was
league, if the like the first team, Mick, were in like the Pepsi League as they call it now, which is the Premier League, what
yeah.
league were the reserve in? How did that structure sort of play
It
out in Iceland?
Wow, it was it was proper tough, and I found out why the role became available. Um, it was the under-19 league, it's called, and a Flocker
Right.
league. So it's like
Yeah.
the reserve league,
Yeah.
but it's an under-19s, but there's no link between. So when you leave under-19s, it's first team or bust.
Yeah.
And that's quite tough for them because that's the pressure. Like a lot of the guys that I had, dads had played for the club or played professionally, and they had to live up to this reputation. It was really tough for them.
Right.
But then when I did accept the reserve team role, because I was doing like under 10s and 14s, under 16s, like this, and I was doing like 17 sessions a week, which was brilliant for me because it was just most days I'm just on the pitch for like 4 or 5 hours. It was great.
Mm.
But then when I met the first time I met the reserve team, the under 19s, they were all 15 and 16 years old.
Right.
and that's a huge difference in players.
Yeah.
Mentally, strength wise, physically, they were unbelievable, and I actually got a visit from the national team coach at the time, Amy Halgrimson, and he said, "Listen, you need," and I was like, "We got beat 5-0, and my head was down, and he says, "Look, listen, just keep working at him with the technical stuff, just keep working at him with the tactical, because the physical will come in
Yeah.
time. Just get him doing the right things, get him into good habits, and all you got to think about, forget the league, forget the results. What can you leave here as a legacy is getting as many of these kids through to get to the first team."
I
That was
think
it.
I think now, Mick, there's a second team on the island. Was there a second team when you was there? Like,
It
not,
was
I don't mean like a reserve team of IBV. I mean like a second club actually on the island in the pyramid.
there
Was that
was
when you was there? Or?
COFS. Yeah, that was the COFS is the KFS as you would put
Right.
it. I think they're in the fourth division again now.
Okay.
They went to the third division when I was there. They got promoted, but that was like again these young guys that had 15, 16, 17 years old
Yeah.
would then sign for EBUAF as a first team player, as a
Yeah.
as a club player. Then they would loan them out to KFS.
Right.
So then they would get to play actually in a man's league. So
Sure.
then
There was a tie up between the two clubs then, yeah?
oh, absolutely, it was something they implemented really early, and they pushed on. So I
Right.
would sit with the sporting director and he'd go, look, listen, we've got one or two players we might put on the bench for the first team just to give them experience,
Yeah.
because the game you're going to play, you're going to either win quite convincingly or you might get beat, but these two players won't make a difference.
Yeah.
So then I take the coach from the KFS would take what players I go along and watch or be in the bench with him, but the other guy would ultimately take control of everything, and then I would just do the training because it's the same guy's training.
Okay.
But the knit between the two teams was perfect. Really, it was really good. I think it still works today as well.
Right.
So but the guys locally knew exactly what to how to work it and how to make it the best opportunities to bring the guys forward into the first team. So it was constant, if I'm honest. But with the season only being 6 months long, May to October, it was hard going, but it worked out okay. And we would have stayed longer, if I'm honest. Would have stayed longer, but the CEO at the time felt that the financial constraints of the club, because they got relegated,
Yeah.
they had to get rid of some players and get rid of some staff, and unfortunately, I was one of them.
Mick,
Uh,
during that time though, just before we talk about your exit at IBV, like obviously, so you're saying that they made cuts coming out of the Pepsi League into the second division, the
yeah,
Lengy League or whatever it is now. But how did you find? Like, I love Iceland, and obviously, it's probably my secret little passion. Well, it's not
yeah,
secret, like the football there and being involved and speaking to people there all the time. But the one thing I find really difficult is like, I know they've added a playoff to add a couple more weeks to the season, but they
mm,
start the season start of April. They're finished by end of September. It used to be, so now
yeah.
they say end of October. But then for 6 months, they're not doing a lot. Like, they're training, but they're not playing. They're playing friendlies. How did you find that period of like? Because all coaches, managers, they live for game day, right? So how did you find the periods of sort of time when there wasn't a competition going on and all this
So
playing indoors?
so when I went at the end of a current season, which was
Right.
October.
Yeah.
So I'd gone around that time, and again, just what you're sort of alluding to there, I looked and went, what am I going to do now till April, May?
Yeah.
But so what they did, the in Reykjavik they have a league,
Yeah. They had the
um,
Olympic Cup,
uh,
don't they,
yeah,
pre-season?
and all these kind of small leagues and cup competitions, and where the small groups, and they agreed to allow EBUAF to enter it as long as all the games were played away and
Right.
nobody had to come to the island because of the weather and the boat and all this kind. And they agreed, obviously, saying, look, so the sporting director spoke to me and it agreed already. Don't get me wrong, they'd already agreed it as a club. And he said, but the thing is, you're going to have to be away every game. And I said, right, okay, if it gets the games, we'll be okay. But during that time, the younger ones, so 8, 10, 12 years old, continued to play.
Right.
And they'd have like in-house games, or we'd go to Selfos and have a little tournament. So there'd be 3 or 4 teams that travel to Selfos locally. And we
How's
would
that
get the
travel though,
coach.
Mick, in the winter, back and forth every week on the boat?
Oh, you know, it was. I, some have said it's brutal, but I didn't mind it too much as long as it weren't too choppy. But what they do is on the boat itself, you go down like into the hull of the boat, and there's all beds, and all it did was rock back and forward. So it was
Yeah.
okay. Put some music on, and the lads used to go to sleep, or the players would go to sleep, or what have you. And you get a little single cabin each, so you just settle in there, but there was times, fortunately for me, if I do recall, there was a weekend I spent the whole weekend in Reykjavik,
Right.
and the first team played, the reserve team played Friday night. So they arranged games Saturday for the under 16s, Sunday for the under 14s. So all I did is I went to a hotel in Reykjavik and waited there. The next team would
Yeah.
go home and they would come on the boat and they would relay back and forward. And I would just meet the group. So they would have like the assistant coach would come from the island from that group, and I would join them as head coach, or vice versa. And it was like that for a lot of the staff who did, multiple ages. They would sometimes just sit in a hotel and wait, so you didn't have to travel back and forward every single day. But there was, I think there was one of the guys was saying it was up to about 130 days constantly that he had to take the boat. One of the
Right.
coaches, and it's like I said, it's because the weather's so changeable there. It was a bit of a lottery about what you was getting. So,
Yeah.
but like it was part of the fun. Away days. I've got videos on my Facebook of away days where the snow had come and we're battling to go up hills, or they'll close the roads or something like that. And it's just part of the life there. You just deal with it and get on with it, and quite enjoyable. Um and because the kids were so used to it, you just sort of fitted in. And coaches did come and didn't like it and didn't like the remote feeling, so they would leave quickly. But for me, it was great. And as I said, had they not been relegated, I'm not sure they'd have asked me to leave. I think we would have still been there possibly.
So off the back of that, then Mick, they did get relegated. Obviously, they've dropped out the Pepsi League or the
Yeah.
Premier League, whatever it would have been called then. And so, you pack your bag and you're off. Where was next? Was it India? Was it India you went next?
Now, before, as we was sort of in the middle of the feeling that we're going to leave, um, we I was doing my A license,
Right.
but I tried to do my A license, so I applied to England, Northern Ireland, Republic of Ireland, Scotland, Wales. All replies were no, because you don't work in our country.
Yeah.
So I was like, I could really do with my A license. I really wanted to get up on this tactical side and sort of, push that in further. Um, so I went back to where I'd done my B license, which was Malta. Spoke to the
Right.
head of the education there, and he said, "Look, we take 3 foreigners, and we've got 2 in already." So yeah, so I was flying for about 9 months. I was flying back and forward to Malta once a month,
Right.
and it was on that trip I met the guy now who's the president of Mahed Academy in Saudi Arabia, and we didn't speak overly much because the rumors were that he was a Saudi prince and he was coming over on a private jet, and it was all this kind of little chitter chat in the background. Um, and I had a job at the time, so I wasn't really looking to do anything else.
Right.
But on the last trip, the last day, where just before we had our assessments, he just walked up and said, "How are you getting on in Iceland? Um, there's a guy coming over to Qatar, which was Hamia. there's a guy coming over to Qatar now. He's quit the Iceland job and he's going to go over to Qatar. What's he
Yeah.
like? And, so we had a bit of a chat about this. And he just said, listen, if I give you a call, would you want to have a chat? I said, yeah, okay. Well, I was open to a chat. And we had a call, had a chat. And within, I don't know, we'd left at EBUAF. We'd come back to England, sort of just sat around looking for the next opportunity. And then the phone rang and he just said, look, there's somebody going to call you from our office. I'll not be doing the call, but they will. He asked me a couple of questions. He then called me back and said, can you fly to Riyadh for 5 days? Have a look around the place. He showed us what they were doing. A little bit apprehensive because we'd heard, you hear all these stories of Riyadh and Saudi Arabia and this.
Hmm.
So I said, look, I would like my wife to come with me. He said, don't worry, we'll do that. We can arrange that. So within about 2 months, we'd gone out to Saudi Arabia, and it was a newly formed government project called Mahed Academy. It's actually thriving really well now. I think they've got league teams in at this structure, and again, another change, another culture, another worry to see how it was going to work and how it. And it was we actually we got there, and the housing was fantastic. You're in like gated communities with security.
Mm.
But then when you went, I remember the first trip to the supermarket, I told my wife to stay indoors, don't open the door till I get back, and all this security minded, attitude. So I went up to the supermarket and I saw a Starbucks and Ben and Jerry's and Baskin and Robbins, and there's people sat outside having an ice cream and having a coffee, and I thought, this is just like a normal city. So from then on, we just went and embraced it the best we could. And we got started on it. But again, I seem to be put into a project that was at its very infancy, and we were waiting on equipment and waiting on things to be passed by the government to allow to. So it was quite challenging that way. That we was then at the constraints of like the lawmakers, and we didn't really get any training going. And within 3 months, the pandemic hit. So we was sent some instructions by the British government that they make an aeroplane ready for anybody that wants to fly out.
Right.
But as I'm moving to Iceland, we'd given up. My wife had a house and she'd given that up, so we had nowhere actually to live. So I went to see the boss there and said, "Look, is it a forced exit? Do we have to go?" Not really. We'll find something for you to do. So we went back for a couple of weeks while the pandemic was like taking hold in over the world,
Hmm.
and they put me in contact with this guy from FIFA. So I made like a PowerPoint presentation of like a grassroots coaches course for FIFA. So that kept me busy for a good 5 6 months. So
Right.
I felt like I had some football work to do, So after 8 months and sort of sat a bit waiting by the phone, and a lot of people had decided to go back to where they came from, and myself and my wife wanted to stick by it. So in the meantime, one of the Saudi princes contacted us and said, "Look, if you've had your injections for the pandemic, then we might have some work for you." So my wife actually got taken to one of the palaces in Riyadh, and she was teaching English and I think maths to two Saudi princesses, two twins. So while I was trying to do the work of keeping myself busy, but then also keeping my wife sort of occupied with not getting bored and what can we do? Can we go out? Can we not? And all this, that they offered her a bit of work. So she was then teaching these children. I was happy doing what I was doing and basically just marking time until till the world opened up again, which it did. And then they went in full on, and for the second year, it was really good because we was training every day with we had different age groups, so it was like 14s and then 12s and 10s, working with different coaches from around the world,
Right.
and it was enjoyable. We enjoyed life. Life there was good. We was out to the malls, and obviously there was no bars there, but we could go out to like cafes and meet up with people, and there was lots to do meeting wise where you'd interact with people. So it was really enjoyable, and we did enjoy it there, to be honest.
So how long was you there for in the end, Mick? A couple of years?
Just over 2 years.
Yeah.
Um, we got to a point where they brought in a new technical director, Dutch guy, um, and he basically just said, I just only want Dutch coaches. I don't want anybody else.
Right.
I bring people in I know I can trust. So I knew them for about a good 6 months, 7 months. So I weren't going to continue. I then went and spoke with the boss, and he said it's his decision. That's it. That's what he wants to do. So we kind of did. We did a little bit of that, and just sort of just went through the motions. I'm sad to say because there was nothing else we could do rather than just look for other work. Um,
Do you
uh,
think that's one of the drawbacks of football, Mick? That obviously
yeah,
the change normally at the top normally brings a lot of change further down that affects like people like you, coaches, assistant coaches, etc. Is that something that
yeah.
you had to,
Oh,
yeah, throughout your career? Obviously, a lot of this travel it's either changed or been brought about by a change in management or
yeah.
circumstances. So, is
It,
that
it,
something that like you struggle with, or do you just feel like it's part and parcel of football?
I think it is part and parcel of football. It's just how the industry works.
Yeah,
But there's been like I was on the side of are they going to keep me, for example, with Saudi Arabia,
yeah,
whereas maybe there's other coaches that the new technical director embraced from locally or foreign that they would want to keep. So it's just that line where, as you know yourself as a player, a new coach comes through the door and
yeah,
you've not been getting a chance. Now you might get a chance, or you're
sure,
established in the team, you might get put out the team. So it's
yeah,
that kind of balance constantly, which it is a pitfall. But I think this is why sometimes the salaries are higher because half the group go, "Hooray, we've got a new coach," and all that. Going, "Oh no, I had a
mm-hmm.
guaranteed shirt or guaranteed contract there, and it's going to change possibly." So it is part of the thing that you just have to deal with. But I just found that it was one of those things. But I felt confident that with the contacts I got around the world, I was confident I'd be able to find something,
Yeah,
or at least make contact with somebody that knew somebody. So I wasn't really in a stressful point of view. We were financially we were okay, and then eventually we left there around it was 2022, um, and then, again, as soon as we got back, we just went and rented somewhere, and then I'm on the phone and I'm on the computer the following day, looking at opportunities that we might be able to create, um, both in the UK and abroad. And it just seems to be that the UK would seem to be a closed shop because they don't like the coaches have been abroad, or they don't like the fact that I was applying for jobs where I was more qualified than the top man. So you
sure,
think I'm not even going to look in there. So I used to just forget it and look abroad. So
yeah,
which was where we found ourselves within, I don't know, another 4 or 5 months. We're on the move again, packing up the wife, and this time it was we went to Gokulam Kerala in India,
yeah,
in Calicut. Um, that was a bit of a long-winded, drawn-out attempt to get there because everything was from day one, everything was a fight. Everything was a um, about, they wanted us to go for visas, but we had to pay. So I was going back to them each day saying, look, this needs to be paid because we can't afford to be paying £200-300. We went down for a visa, got to West London for a visa,
Yeah.
um, and they put me down as being my passport was supplied in Liverpool, but they put me down as being born in Liverpool. So that little small detail then got us kicked out of the visa office while we got it correct. So they had to call back to India, correct all the mistakes they'd made, and then we had to stay in a hotel overnight and get in the next day to get a visa. So it was all these, even the first few days of just getting a visa were very dragged out and it, ill thought out, I felt, if I'm honest. And then obviously we eventually got there. And again, the structure of it was exactly what we had experienced even back in the UK. The
Right.
organisation, the the micromanaging from the top. I didn't adhere to it. I did. They brought a new coach in for the first. I was technical director, although in the 11 months we were there, I think I had 7 job titles.
Right.
So it was because I'd started to structure something in one area. Then they said, right, okay, leave it to them. Now come and do this again here, do this. And I was technical director. Then I went on to the women's side because the young lady didn't have a B license, at least an AFC-B license. But she was related to the president, so that's why she got a job. And it was all this kind of thing. Um, Players were given their debut. I remember the women losing a championship final, and there was a 15 or 16-year-old girl on the pitch, and nowhere near the standard that was needed. I would have introduced her a few minutes in games that didn't matter,
Yeah.
and but then it turned out that it was from the president's original school, so he was doing a favour for a teacher. So kind of things like that, and you're trying to win, and then you're getting fingers pointed because you're not won a championship. It was really, really difficult. And then I was working with the first team and the reserve team, um, and players were having standards that they were setting themselves. They're not getting a chance because they'd had a fallout with some kind of management. And it was all these things just intertwined.
Yeah.
And then obviously living there, I've been previously with Bolton to India, but we was treated like kings and kept in like I stayed in a mansion, huge 20 odd bedroom mansion. My wife had previously worked there, which that's what we'd agreed to go over. She stayed in the highest star hotels when she worked there, so driven everywhere. However, once we got to uh, Calicut, we were moved here, there, and everywhere, and we had to find our own way in in the life and our own way day to day, and it was really really difficult because we were put in a remote area where there was no Western people.
Right.
They didn't speak any English, and it was such a stress and a struggle. And then there was trips we'd have to take, and I was asked to go on do you know the trains you see on the TV with all the
Yeah.
people? I was on
Yeah.
one of those for 10 hours, and I was like, whoa, this is like plus all the things where what I would normally want to do on the pitch, I was getting constraints to stop me doing those things. So that became a pressure to me and a stress to me that related to back home, which then stressed on my wife. My wife was offered a job out there that nothing came of that. They didn't speak to her about any job. So she sat at home. I'd have to go to away games, which might take 2 or 3 days. So then I was worried that she was alone with no social interaction. Um, the electric the power outages sometimes in this height of the summer
It's
will be
a
8 or 9 hours a day.
it's a country that's living totally different to what you're used to, right?
Oh,
So it's
absolutely. And
there's a lot of, shall we say, off the pitch worries that kind of
yeah,
makes going to work hard, right?
yeah, absolutely. These things where, like I say, just something as simple as setting up a training session, but then we haven't got the pitch
Yeah,
because it was shared with somebody else. So where do we go? Oh, just take them to the gym then. But in the women's squad, shall we say, of 18, 19 players, 13 or 14 were international, whether it be for India or,
yeah,
Nepal or these kind, and they were fantastic players with high demands of me, which was brilliant. They had high demands of the club, high demands of each other. And I really, really did enjoy working with these players because it was the highest level I wanted to be at. I was thinking I could be capable of being at. But then there was always little constraints behind that you're not allowed to this, you can't do that. And if they argued, you were just sort of pushed aside. And
mm.
it was really difficult to sort of say, well, to reason with people. And it was like, listen, we're in charge. I know that, but this is the best way to do this from a football perspective.
So
But then it became,
what was your actual role, Mick? You was in charge of the women's team, and was you around the men's team as well?
I was around the men's team for a little while. And I was
Yeah,
around the reserve team. Then I was taken off the reserve team. Then I was director of academies. Then I was director of coach education. So we did some coach education days,
right.
which was okay because some of these guys were some good ex-players, but then their education had been limited. So basically, it was a blank slate for me. So I went in with things like how to set up a training session, how to structure a training session, because
Mm.
they didn't know how. So then I would do things like that, and then the next day I might be on to back with the women's team. I did some analysis for the women's team. I've been involved with David Hobson at PFSA. Have you heard this?
Yeah, okay.
So I've known David since my Accrington days. Great guy, great company, PFSA. So I was learning all the analytics stuff, and I was doing all that. So I said, look, we could do some analysis. And these players came to me, these international players, saying, this is really good structured stuff. We really like this. We need it. The president heard about it, asked me if I'd do it for the first team men. So I went and did it for the first team men, which was good insight for me because I thought, well, this might be a route through to the first team as the head coach. And I went and did this. We've got international players in that group. In the men's group, they were like, this is really good, brilliant. You should be head coach like this. They got rid of the head coach. He's from Cameroon, Richard, and they said, just be ready because we'll be asking you to take the first team. So I said, okay. And he said, have you got anything you want to say about this before, officially gets offered? I said, yeah. The centre back, who's 33, he's from Cameroon. He's a bully. I wouldn't want him in my team. He lacks pace, but he just screams at people and he harangues them in private areas. I've heard these stories, and he wants to be out. Well, because the president had signed him, he didn't want to get rid of him to show face. So then they said, well, look, we'll retract the offer of head coach. So then they said, just continue doing what you're doing. So it was kind of a daily battle because then they'd come with a request, you need to do this, you need to go and do that. And I just felt it wasn't going the way I wanted it to go. The
I
terms were
mean,
always like,
Kerala are quite a big ISL team, right?
yes, yeah, they're probably in the top 3 or 4, or they should be.
Yeah, because
Um,
quite a few
um,
English boys have ended up Kerala. Isn't that where Chopra went and a few others when the ISL
couple
first
have played
started?
out there, yeah. There's
Yeah,
a couple was out there, and I know Simon Grayson went, Larry went there.
right,
Simon was out there. Stevie Coppell, Stephen Constantine, if you know Stephen.
right.
He's just left his role in Pakistan as the head coach. But he does a lot. He was India's national team coach.
Yeah.
But I just felt that I was kind of working my way along this little path where I would help to do, to help the club out. I would do what they asked me to do. It was no problem.
Sure.
But then when it came to doing, I had to then do things that I wanted to do for benefit myself as a career. And then it was like the barriers are up. Don't get ahead of yourself. And that was the frustrating part for me because I felt I could have gone into the first team and helped out.
Sure.
Um, but then there was a barrier up and somebody else got put in charge. Uh, but it turned out they just wanted a yes man, and I'm not a yes man. I'm not one of those guys that'll just bow to just keep somebody appeased, in the background. Um, if it says head coach on the door, then let me be a head coach. Let me
Yeah.
do the team. If there's people interfering, I just want to stay away from that. So, as I said, we even a month away from just renewing a contract, we just felt it was time. I'd had enough. I just the demands they were putting on me was breaking me down mentally. So I just said, look, you're gonna have to let me go out of contract, and we'll just do a mutual thing because the way you've done things is not professional. It's not structured the way I want to do it. You're doing it your way, asking for my help, but then continually doing it your way. So if you don't mind, I'd like to depart. After a bit of a fight of about a week or two, they agreed, and we left. We left. But again, on leaving, I was informed by one of the staff that we would travel 10 hours on this train to an airport, and there'd be no tickets there. So when we got there, we'd be stuck without any tickets, just as like a parting gift from this club. And I thought it was really unprofessional. I don't know how true that was.
Yeah.
So we went the opposite way. We flew out of another airport and paid for ourselves to go, and we just stayed in Dubai, which is where we've ended up back in Livingston now. So that's pretty much it. Um,
Amazing journey though, Mick. Where would you say, out of all those countries, where would you say you was your most happiest?
Iceland,
Iceland,
same as
yeah.
you. I would say Iceland because it's so. I'm not saying easy going. It's just so friendly, and
Yeah,
it's just everybody's happy to be happy. You
yeah,
know,
they are.
um,
Does that
other
make does
places,
that does that tie into like the players' attitude as well, Mick? Like, just is it a pleasure to work with the players there?
yeah, yeah. The local guys once they bought into what I was asking, that they were once they were on board, that was it. It went for fun, because um, they want this again. But every country I've been to, they're striving and they're
Yeah,
demanding to be the best they can be, and
yeah,
they want you to help. And when I'm trying to do that, then that's okay. But usually the constraints come from somebody who's not really football related. They don't understand your thinking coming from a football point of view or a dressing room point of view. They're doing it from a financial aspect or a political aspect. And that's where it gets me a little bit frustrated. But
sure.
yeah, but there's been places like, you know, even though it was only just growing, New York was great as a cultural thing to live in the middle of, to see all this, where people come from all around
Yeah,
the world to see this. Or Japan. I did the Chelsea allowed me to go to the Club World Cup in Japan in 2012. So to spend a few days in Tokyo it blew my mind.
yeah,
And that would be a place on my list is to work there. Although I coached there for a little bit, I was there with Chelsea, but it was unbelievable. But then you could pick places like Australia or the Philippines, where other sports are the main sports for this country.
mm,
Um, like with like American football is the main one in America.
yeah,
Soccer's further down the list. These
yeah,
other ones like the Philippines, they had baseball and handball and things.
yeah,
And football was not that high, but the demand was there to be a success. The demand for learning was there. The hunger for taking, the sponge of these coaches and people wanted to learn as much as they can was fantastic.
yeah,
So it's not been bad. it's not been bad. I think I've done well, but there's there's not too much I would change. Uh,
Where would you say would was the best quality, Mick? Or obviously you've done a lot of countries where I'd say the game's sort of like emerging and as you say, trying to grow. Where was you like most pleased or shocked by how good the level was?
would say the Nordic countries, Norway or Iceland.
Yeah.
Um, I would say that because they've already got that base in there, and it's just a case of somebody releasing it. And I
Mm,
think Norway had a good side during the '90s, and then going into the 2000s, there was always some great players coming out there that came to the Premier League. Solskjaer and these kind of people. But then with
yeah,
Iceland getting the success they did, qualifying for the Euros first of all for the first time, obviously then to the 2018 World Cup, it made these people proud, and like you said, the amount of coaches that got qualified, that drive was there again, the hunger was there again, and that I thrive on that. So to see these people do that and to do so well, you know, it's great to see. But I think what it does then, it reflects on myself, because
yeah,
when people are enthusiastic and wanting to learn, I'm willing to go out there and work my hardest to make that happen.
sure.
So probably if the Faroe Islands is one where one of a friend of mine has gone there, and I knew a couple of players from there. That looks like it could grow and grow and grow, but again, because it's that small, it's that restricted. That might be an issue, but that's one place I felt I missed out on. If I had missed out, I felt that's one place I've missed out on going
Yeah,
because I've heard so many.
a couple of years ago, Mick, I helped a club in the Faroes get a couple of players, and
Yeah,
it was only the other night I said to my wife, "That's probably in my top three places that I want to go right now." The Faroes, obviously, it's difficult to get to, and there's not many flights, but I'm hoping next year that I go and, as per normal, if I get a long weekend somewhere, I'll drag my wife to a couple of games.
yeah,
Uh, so, where would you say if you could? If if you could pick anywhere to coach next, Mick, where would you go?
I would say maybe Canada.
Yeah,
Been a couple of times with Bolton, like their structure. They've got a Premier League that's quite it's thriving. Maybe they feel it's in the shadow of the MLS, but still, I
yeah,
thought it was again culturally, and the hunger for it was fantastic. There's a few British people out there that have kept that, kept the ball bouncing along, and the education side of it. There, I'll go onto their coach education website, and it's vast, and it involves everybody from grassroots up to the international level, and
mhm,
they're just constantly wanting to help people there, or maybe the Faroe Islands.
yeah.
So I might end up seeing you there one day, maybe.
That's,
Japan,
that
Japan
sounds.
would be one for
Are
for
you
sure.
are you actively looking now, Mick, or are
Well,
you
at the
sitting at
moment, as we left India, my wife became ill.
right,
So at the moment, I'm her full-time carer.
right,
So I've taken a role locally with a grassroots team um, in near Livingston. So I'm just helping them out a little bit. So
right?
I'm working there. So I'm doing under 15s, and then doing a bit of coach education in the new year. But yeah, I'd have to just sort of see where the position was with my wife, and see how she develops over the next few months. But
Sure.
and it would depend on what came in, and I've had a couple of offers, and there've been ones that's no, not I'm not ready for that. Um, but I'm always open to a chat if somebody wants to have a chat, because I'm always one of those people that if I can't accept the role, I know a few people that would. So
Sure.
I'd just go on to them and link them up. I've just done that now with a friend of mine in the south.
As
Um,
As you get older, Mick, do you get a little bit more picky? Obviously, as you say, like you've been to a lot of places, security, you've had your great times, you've had some struggles. Like as you get older, do you? Because I feel like that a little bit with work. Some 10 years ago I was going here, there, and everywhere, and now it's a little bit like, can we just do that
Yeah,
bit
that's
on the
that's pretty
phone?
much
Or
it. Yeah, yeah, that's
yeah,
pretty much it. You can start picking and choosing where you want to go because what you try and do is make yourself sort of financially secure
yeah,
and then structurally secure with your family, and then it's up to yourself how you want to do it. But then you can sort of pick, like I said, pick and choose. Whereas, like exactly the same as you, 10, 12 years ago, I'd be on a plane going here, there, and everywhere.
yeah,
You know, and it didn't bother me. I do recall just one I remember was I'd flown back from Baltimore playing Manchester United at Old Trafford, and I got off a plane from Vancouver um, at about 4 a.m. or something like that, and I had a little sleep. I went and then my boss took me to the brunch, which was the first team we're having just before they travelled to Old Trafford.
right.
And Owen Coyle was sat there, obviously with the players that were there at the time. Oh, you coming to the game today? And I didn't even have a chance to answer. And my boss went, oh, no, Mick's on a flight tonight to New Delhi. And it was just that. And like I said, in 2 years of being with Bolton, 2.5 years, it was like a whirlwind.
Mm,
It was a constant. I never seemed to be out of an airport or a hotel room. But then you got to go on this field with these kids and or these players, and it was the guys that wanted they welcomed you so well. So it was kind of enjoy it while it's happening. But obviously now it becomes a little bit. I put myself in for a couple of jobs now, but if it doesn't happen, I'm not too worried. But I'm always open to have a chat with somebody if there's an opportunity that opens up.
I'll start at the worst first. What was the hardest experience? Obviously, being away coaching, I suppose your wife getting ill mix not is not great, right?
India, yeah, India was
Yeah.
that one where the way I just felt I was restricted on what to show what I could do.
Right.
Um, and then obviously, like I said, my wife was starting to get ill in India, which we didn't know then, but it was that kind of stressful time where we weren't sure what was going to happen. Felt a lot better once we got back here because then she was diagnosed quickly, and then we could start to just restructure our lives
Yeah.
as a couple, not as a football coach and his missus. It
Yeah.
was it was as a couple, and that's where we've been for the last 18 months or so. Um, we're going okay. She struggles at times with good and bad days, but we're trying to fight our way through it. Um, I've been keeping my hand in with doing PFSA stuff. The Scottish FA now, I'm involved with them. I'm trying to get some CPD with them, get my name out there a little bit maybe. So I'm just continually trying to keep my hand in, but also to just live day to day and try and enjoy it.
Sure. And what would you say, Mick, is your best experience in all these countries that you've had? What was the one highlight that you'll take away from all this travel and countries? What would you say?
You know, I don't think I could pick one. I really don't. I don't think it'd be fair to pick one. Um, because if somebody hears this in Iceland and I say Norway, they'll be shouting. Um, um, there's so many good ones because the people you meet along the way. Um, I'm talking about people from 2004, 2006, 2007. I'm still
Yeah,
speaking to today. I'll get a card at Christmas or a message at Christmas, or certain things will go, and it's just great memories all along the way. Um, it's selective memory as well. You try and forget the bad times and try and remember the good stuff. So I've been trying to do that and stay positive and be happy that it happened rather than what I might have missed out on.
sure. And then, Mick, who would you say all the time? It could be one of each, an experienced player or one that you coached when they were younger and went on. Like, is there a couple of players from your travels that really sort of stick in your memory?
Yeah, yeah. Not even from my travels because from Jersey was Brett Pittman, if you remember Brett.
Yeah,
played for
He's still playing
Bournemouth,
non-league somewhere, isn't he? In Bournemouth way, and he playing?
smashing it like 70 goals a season or something. Yeah,
Yeah,
36. Well, I coached him from 12 to 16
right,
till he went to Bournemouth, and I was quite proud of that. I used to keep in touch with him a lot, not so much now. Um, there was a young boy called Kung Mu. We managed to get him out to Holland from South
right,
Korea, and he went to Germany. I don't know how he's ended up. And possibly, and I know it's going back to EBUAF, but the boys that went from the first team at 15, 16, 17 to push these guys on to go and play for the first team. I think there's still 5 or 6 still in the first team now
right.
from 2018, 19. So I'm proud of that fact because, I was pushed through Hamir to say, look, just don't worry about the results, which is it's quite a strange thing to say, but remember what development you're going to put in. And I think
Mm,
I was proud of that, leaving those reserve team and in there and the young under 14 girls that some of them are still playing now, and I think a few have gone to international level. So it's quite proud to look back on those and look at the pictures and have a smile of what happened. Again, like try and think of the positives rather than things that might have slipped away. But so
yeah.
stay with that with it, thought of that in mind.
Yeah, no, mate, it's been really enlightening. As I say, I don't think I've met someone that's coached in 34 countries, that's for sure. Obviously, like anything, right, you're gonna have some good memories, you're gonna have some bad memories, but
Yeah,
talking to you now, obviously, there's far more good memories and good countries and good sort of experiences that you've had that should outweigh the bad. So,
yeah,
yeah, 34 countries and counting. I hope in the next couple of years you get that up to 40. That'd be a nice
yep.
number a nice round number to get to. Obviously, from my part, I thank a good friend of mine, Matty Sirret in Spain, for setting this up. And Mick, I appreciate your time.
Thanks
Uh,
very much.
Great. It's been great talking to you. Great listening to someone with so much passion and football knowledge. I wish your wife recuperation continues, and
Thanks.
hopefully we'll get to catch up a game in the near future. But yeah, Mickey, 34 countries and counting. I appreciate your time, and yeah, thanks for everything. Really,
Thank you, Christian. Thanks for having me on.
no,
And I'll
I'll put
send
your
I'll send my. You've got my links for my
yeah,
socials if people want to get in
yeah,
contact.
I'll add that to the I'll add that to the viewing and
Yeah,
yeah, if you need anything else or anyone wants to get in touch,
yeah.
yeah, please do so with Mick directly.
Thanks, Christian.
Are you on Twitter as well, or is it just LinkedIn and Facebook?
Just LinkedIn and Facebook. I have got a X account, but
Coaching
very
one.
rarely I go to it. But yeah,
Yeah,
usually
no problem.
easiest on Facebook and LinkedIn.
Okay.
All right, mate.
I
Thank you
wish you all
very
the
much.
best. You look
All the
after.
best. Thanks,
Take care,
Christian.
mate. Thanks
Thank
all the
you.
best. Bye bye.
Bye.